Japan, Part 12. One measure of Japanese and American competitiveness is in trade balance. America's trade imbalance with Japan approached $10 billion a year by the late 1970s, with few signs of abatement despite dollar devaluation and political pressure. But if anything, the imbalance understates Japanese industrial competitiveness, for much of America's exports are in agricultural products and raw materials. Japan's trade policy until the late 1960s was among the most protectionist in the world, and that once greatly impeded American attempts to penetrate Japanese markets. Despite rapid trade liberalization in most areas, Japanese ministries still occasionally create special difficulties for competitive American products. And until the mid-1970s, the United States government did not adequately represent the interest of the American companies in their efforts to break into the Japanese markets. But the primary reason for the trade imbalance, as the Boston Consulting Group's 1978 study for the United States Treasury Department has shown, lies not in Japan's protectionism but in America's inferior competitiveness and lack of interest in cultivating exports to Japan. America's competitiveness has declined compared not only to Japan but also to the other countries. From the late 1960s to the late 1970s, of goods purchased by Japan from overseas, America lost about 40% of its market share to Australia, Korea, Taiwan, and other Asian countries. The extent of Japanese superiority over the United States in industrial competitiveness is under-publicized in America, but the true state of affairs was reflected by a high official of a leading Japanese research center who privately acknowledged that the United States, with its highly competitive agricultural sector, has by now taken place to Japan's pre-war colonies, supplying agricultural products and raw materials to a superior modern industrial machine. Unless America's competitiveness is improved, short-range palliative, including devaluation of dollar, are likely to have little effect, and the imbalance may well increase. Given the decline in America's research capacity compared to Japan's growing interest in research, the lack of encouragement by the United States government to American business compared to Japan's encouragement of its business, and America's shortage of foreign capital compared to Japan's growing surplus, there is every reason to expect that the competitive gap will continue to widen. In areas where Japanese competitiveness has increased so rapidly as to threaten the large American industries, United States felt it necessary to impose non-market mechanism to reduce the Japanese threat. In the 1960s, when Japanese textiles threatened to overwhelm the American textile industry, political pressures from America eventually led to voluntary quotas by Japanese companies to avoid formal tariff barriers. In the 1970s, when it appeared as if several major American television companies might be forced out of Japan's business, and they may be forced out of business by Japanese competitors, Japanese companies similarly held back on the sales to the United States. In the case of steel and a complicated formula, a trigger price mechanism was used to restrain steel imports, a substantial part of which came from Japan.